And Rory's four ball. Rory's four ball. I got it. Sorry, Jesus. Rory's four ball is the front page of the Star this morning. Emotional McIlroy breaks down after a tough week, but vows to come back as he hails teammates and Euro thrashed, which could also have been top of the morning to you. McIlroy left in tears as USA smash points record.
If only they'd worn different colour clothes.
Well, I'm just saying, it's like
it could have been so different. Like,
our uniforms are crap. They are.
Like,
I'm not saying that's why we lost.
No wonder Padraig Harrington's not getting his legacy tarnished. He could do nothing about the
8:47 this morning. Nathan Murphy, good morning to you.
Morning, lads.
Who's got the better gear?
Oh, the US, without question.
Our gear's crap, basically. It is, isn't it?
It's not pretty. It's insanely expensive as well, it seems. I do remember at previous Ryder Cups going into the merchandising tent and having a wander around. And if you want to get the official replica, you're probably looking at maybe up on $1,000 for one of those nice European jackets.
What? Really?
Yeah. Really?
You're joking me.
I'm not.
Wow.
Get online there. Check out the Ryder Cup website. They might even have some of them left. Yeah, it's...
not $1,000 anymore, Nathan. No one's paying $1,000 for that crap this week.
No, our boys took one hell of a beating, eh?
Yeah, so
pretty disastrous.
Let's start with Harrington's legacy, because there's two schools of thought, which you can see this debate happening on Twitter. I talked about it a little bit earlier on. One is that, look, Harrington's legacy is secure. He's one of our best and most beloved sports people, and fair enough, that will always be true. However, he did open, as Owen pointed out earlier on, he did open the Pandora's box of the legacy question by saying this was important to him. And we've seen Nick Faldo's legacy ruined by a bad Ryder Cup experience. Not ruined, but certainly he became a figure of fun for a period of time, and then his reputation got restored by him being excellent as a commentator. And I've no doubt Harrington's going to end up in the commentary box at some point in the next few years, and he will be absolutely sensational. So, but in the meantime, there is a short window here where people are going to start saying, did Harrington make all the right decisions? Could it have been a bit closer? Like, sure, fair enough, the best team won, but did it need to be such a paddling?
I think over the coming weeks and months, that's what Padraig Harrington will be thinking long and hard about. He said afterwards last night that he could sleep easy because he felt he made all the right decisions, that he had no regrets. But one of the great things about Harrington is that he's one of the most analytical minds going, and he loves to talk about his analytical mind. So I suspect when we hear interviews in a week's time, in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time, in 5 years' time, he will have different angles to what he did. It felt as though Harrington never really put his stamp on this team. That Europe have a pre-prepared plan. They are so well organised in this sort of post-McGinley era. They push everything to a T. They don't leave any stone unturned. Everything that these players need is put there. And it felt as though Thomas Bjorn could have been the captain this week, or Lee Westwood could have been the captain this week, that the sort of peculiarities of Padraig Harrington never really came to the fore. And that's what makes Harrington so brilliant, is that he's not just like everybody else. Whereas this European Ryder Cup team, the way they went about it, it felt like anybody could have captained. And I'm sure one of the things he's thinking about is for 3 years of preparation, what he sacrificed probably from his own game over the last 2-3 years to prepare for this. You're right, they could have just rocked up and probably would have won 9 points for everything that was put into this. So I don't think he did a huge amount wrong. I think it's different from Nick Faldo, where Faldo, it was just shambolic and embarrassed himself in many ways, from his speech ahead of the tournament to some of his selections to the way they played. It's just general arrogance around the whole thing. Likewise, Darren Clarke made a massive error of judgment with what happened with Danny Willett. With Harrington, the odds were stacked against them. Best American side of all time. This is the American dream team, essentially. And this is Europe at maybe the weakest point they've ever been. And you go through the key things that a Ryder Cup captain has to do. So one of the first decisions they make is how many wildcard picks do you want? And it's been put out there as a stroke of genius that Steve Stricker went with 6 wildcards and Harrington only went with 3. Harrington's justification was, well, you're probably always going to pick 7, 8, and 9 anyways. And that's exactly what Steve Stricker did. Then you look at the wildcard picks themselves. I mentioned this pre-tournament. Harrington couldn't say it, but he must have been so frustrated and disappointed that nobody made a run at this. There was no controversy. Yeah, Justin Rose or Ian Poulter or Shane Lowry, none of them have been winning tournaments. None of them have really given him a headache ahead of this. And after that, There was really nobody. There was nobody else in the mix. Even if Francesco Molinari, and I'm sure we'll talk about what you can take from a Ryder Cup. Francesco Molinari at the last Ryder Cup won 5 matches, every single match, and wasn't even in the running, it felt, for a wild card. And then that next generation of Bob McIntyre of Scotland, who started the season well, who just faded away. So I think in terms of his team selection, you can't put a huge amount on Harrington for that. That was the best that Europe have to offer. And then there's what happened during the week. I thought press conference wise, he was rock solid. The pairings are the one thing I think we look back on, and was there a way over the weekend that they could have wrestled this back? And Saturday morning is probably the one you look at and think, at that stage they're 6-2 down, you got to do something. And it felt as though they never deviated from the plan at all, that this was something that was written down weeks, months ago. Here's how we're going to line up. Whereas there was too many players just not playing well enough, whether it was Casey or Hatton or Westwood, Fitzpatrick. Like Shane Lowry had to go out. I cannot believe Shane Lowry didn't play a foursomes match at the Ryder Cup. That maybe a Tommy Fleetwood had to be out there. I think he should have played Rory on Saturday morning. I know Rory stunk the joint out, but I think if they were to win this, they needed Rory McIlroy playing well and needed to give him every possible opportunity to play well. And, well, I think once Saturday morning was done, it was really done. But I'm sure there's lots of little things that Harrington would change, but overall, I don't think the result was ever really in doubt. This is a stupendously talented
It's the
American
size
team.
of the result, really. And we were talking about this earlier on, the Alan Shipnuck piece about how America are going to dominate for a decade. It feels like Shipnuck got it a little bit early, but it feels like they are going to dominate for a decade, given the quality of players they have, quality of players they have coming through. And as you say, where is that next generation of European golfer who are going to win tournaments coming from?
Well, there's a bigger issue. Remember, this is the PGA Tour against the European Tour. And the European Tour, because of the COVID issues, is in a difficult spot right now in terms of the prize money, which means world ranking points, which means these European players aren't given the opportunities to get into the big tournaments, to move up the world rankings and get themselves into Ryder Cup reckoning. So there may not be a huge turnover in this European side over the next 2 years. You would expect it. We've seen the last of Poulter and Westwood. But I would expect that 7, 8, 9 of these Europeans will be back, because somebody like Shane Lowry, for example, because of winning a major, is in every major championship, every World Golf Championship. He's one of the few Europeans who can sit down next week and plan out his entire 2022 and play whatever tournaments he wants. So there's sort of deep-rooted problems in the European Tour. And you look at that team, the only young players in that side are John Ram and Victor Hovland. They didn't come the old-school traditional European Tour route. They came through the American college system, the exact same as all these Americans did. None of them came through Challenge Tour, European Tour, winning tournaments, building themselves up like that. That route just doesn't seem to be happening for the best young European players. So the next decade of domination may well happen. Like, this was on home soil. For all the different stats of European dominance, the home team almost always wins the Ryder Cup. And the Americans were very conscious of that last night, that to really prove that they are a great Ryder Cup team, they have to go away from home and win. They have to go to Rome, where Europe can set up the course that they want. Last Ryder Cup, it was the Americans who took a beating. They seem to have managed to regroup. They've got a really good, likeable team. For all that Europe sold the team spirit thing, and it seems as though that stood right till the end, the Americans also got on really well, and so much was focused on Brooks and Bryson. But the other 10 seemed to click instantly. All seemed to like each other. All were pulling in the right direction. And Steve Stricker seemed to be a sort of Carlo Ancelotti type figure who just knew how to bring the best out of brilliant talent and not interfere too much in what they're doing.
And they were so angry. They were so passionate, so up for it. And maybe that just comes from it being a home Ryder Cup. But is there something different when it comes to the edge of this American golfer as well? Is the collegiate system so competitive that they come into the professional game with the perfect mindset for Ryder Cup time?
I think when you have thousands of people just chanting USA, USA, USA behind you, that you feel a little bit emboldened. Like, I know Justin Thomas in particular has split opinion over the weekend for his antics and, boozing on the first tee, or having half a beer on the first tee, and just is generally trying to stir up the crowd, and how maybe it was a bit childish. And we rarely see that Justin Thomas. Justin Thomas in some ways is a forgettable enough type character, but a Ryder Cup does that to players. It brings out a very different side of them, and the Americans seem to be able to embrace it. They seem to know that there's very few Europeans here. We can kind of do what we want. This is our town, and we'll run it whatever way we want to run it. And the Europeans couldn't respond. Like, maybe the Europeans needed to play a little bit dirtier. Like, maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they needed to be stirring the pot around Bryson and Brooks constantly, but they never got under their skin. And like, the Ryder Cup is such a strange event. There's so much analysis afterwards about what makes a good Ryder Cup player, and should you be more emotional, the team spirit tapping into it. Dustin Johnson went 5-0 this week. He won every single match. With Dustin Johnson, there's no emotion, there's no nothing, there's no overthinking. He just rocks up and plays golf. So we read an awful lot into the Ryder Cup, what it happens, what it means. The Americans had the better golfers who played the way they played all year. Every one of these golfers, if you're watching PGA Tour on a Sunday night, you've seen all of these golfers consistently win big tournaments, hold big putts. And I mentioned last week, 3 Europeans have won on the PGA Tour this year: Jon Rahm, Rory McIlroy, and Seamus Power. So the Europeans have, and that's where it's at. The PGA Tour is where it's at. I'm sure people say they've been contending on the European Tour, but the PGA Tour is where the elite are, and the Europeans have been dominated by the Americans over the last year.
What's the score if Paul McGinley is the Ryder Cup captain for Europe?
I don't see Europe winning it. Maybe they win a few more points here and there, but maybe they don't. Maybe it's an impossible question. I think we're saying that you're suggesting then that Harrington didn't do something, that there was something about the preparation that Harrington.
Well, all managers do things differently. He's not suggesting that. That's not. It's not really. It's like he might have picked a different team. He might have picked different. The setup would have been different because no two rivers, the same river is never the same. Like
actually, that's the point I'm making. I wonder, would it have been? It feels as though what the European Tour have done is taken the McGinley template, which works so brilliantly, and replicated it and replicated it and replicated it. And they were right to take as much of that as possible. But actually, did they allow enough for the individuality of a Padraig Harrington to come through in terms of how he wanted to run the show? Like, it feels as though this European team, and I'd say they'll try and continue the same way into Rome in 2 years' time. So I've no idea. Maybe they would have won a couple more points, but I don't think any European team was winning this. That's why almost every prediction was an American victory.
Yeah, it's very hard to decipher what exactly the captain contributes in terms of the scoreboard. Like, what is he doing to hold the team back or push the team forward? And the bottom line here from what you're saying, Nathan, it seems, is that Harrington's MO was to get out of the way of the players. So would you be fully of the belief that if Harrington had this back again, and as you say, in a few years' time, if he's thinking about this properly, he will be thinking to himself, I would just wish it was more of Padraig Harrington there rather than me just doing my best to stay out of the way of talented golfers?
Well, all of this is guesswork because nothing has really come out as of yet. And watching the press conference last night, it was almost too jovial from the Europeans. There was a lot of laughing and joking, and again, a lot of talk about the team ethic and how much they bought into this and how much I love my teammates and all of that. So maybe there won't be any cracks. Maybe all these European players in 3-4 years will say, that was a brilliant Ryder Cup. Padraig did very little wrong. We were just run over by this brilliant American team. But I don't think from Harrington's point of view, he's going to be thinking about this for the rest of his life, about could I have done this slightly differently? Could I have done that? Did he give them enough space? Like, did he create an atmosphere that could get the best out of Rory McIlroy? Did he put too much on McIlroy's shoulders? Did he not put enough on McIlroy's shoulders? We're never quite sure with Rory what's best. It seems he wants the emotional energy of it, but then actually quite often he can't cope with the emotional energy of it. And when one of your best players isn't playing well and everyone expects so much from him, like, it can very quickly bring things down. And like McIlroy didn't perform this week, but McIlroy's another player who hasn't performed in months. Like, Lee Westwood had a brilliant couple of weeks earlier in the season, hasn't performed in months. Tyrrell Hatton, I saw people questioning Tyrrell Hatton if there was wildcard that he'd get picked. Tyrrell Hatton's the 4th highest ranked European in the world. But again, his form over the last 2-3 months has just been disastrous. So too many of these players have been in a bad run of form at the wrong time, and maybe a different manager, a different captain obviously does things differently, but end result, record or not, is a USA win.
The Rory interviews afterwards were really interesting, and I guess there's a lot of sports people who say that the older they get, the more they care, the more nervous they get, the more emotional they sometimes get, and maybe that's what we're seeing now, kind of a more emotional, older version of Rory McIlroy. Like, I'm not sure if that's a fair thing to say, and if so, at what point does it start to go the other way, that there's a more mellow version of Rory McIlroy that, as you say, the nerves don't get to him a little bit more, or the emotion maybe doesn't get to him as much as perhaps it has been over the last few years?
Well, I think that is the big question about Rory. How do you get that spark out of McIlroy? Like McGinley always talks about him needing the elbows out. That's McIlroy is best when he's in a bit of a scrap, when he's trying to prove something. When you think back to his major wins with Mickelson and Fowler, and he sort of pushes past them on the last hole in the darkness because he wants to get finished and win this, and he's so upset that the two of them are sort of talking and laughing on the tee, and that drove him on. We don't seem to see that with Rory. And this isn't the first time we've seen Rory in tears at the end of a round in the last couple of years. Remember Portrush as well. And that's what I'm saying about Rory, from what he's saying, seems to want that pressure, seems to want that emotion, and seems to want it, something a bit bigger than just the trophy, wants a connection. But actually, when it's there, he doesn't seem to be able to bring the best out of himself. So at Portrush, we all remember what happened to Portrush and how disastrous it was. Now he felt he left everybody down. And again, the assumption is coming into this Ryder Cup, he's a natural leader for this team. But he didn't play well. He played, as he admitted himself, he played desperately poor over the first 2 days, and that does have a knock-on effect when one of your best players does that. So I don't think you can criticise McIlroy, or I don't think anyone is, for the tears or any of that. But he's in a strange place at the moment. There's no question about that. I think everyone's struggling to figure out where Rory is. It feels like, watching him last night, that golf is still a massive priority for him and that he desperately wants to go and achieve something. But the Ryder Cup's an irrelevance for Rory McIlroy in terms of his legacy. You know, everything is built around majors. It feels he wants everything, though. He doesn't want just to be the major champion, the 4-time major champion. He wants to be the Ryder Cup hero as well. We're actually, just go win 7 majors. Europe's greatest ever player.
We're out of time.
Ryder Cup it'll happen.
We're out of time, but 30 seconds. Brooks and Bryson buddies again, or no?
Nah. Bryson wants them to be buddies. Bryson wants an end to this. He just wants the respect and the love of Brooks. And the 2 hugs last night, the first one beside the green, you could tell Bryson went in for the proper full-on hug, where Brooks just wanted a little shake of the hand. And then, I don't know if you saw the American press conference where they're forced together afterwards, kind of like, 2 13-year-olds with all their mates getting around, telling them to have a little bit of a kiss. The 2 of them are pushed together. They again have an embrace, but it's all Bryson. It's all Bryson doing the hugging right there. Brooks just really, really wants to be anywhere else. So maybe it brings an end to some of the nonsense, and Brooks realises, maybe some people have had a word with him this week, that he shouldn't be stirring the pot. But Bryson had a really good week in terms of his profile, because everyone loved what he was doing. Like, 4 balls couldn't suit him better. He can take all the risks in the world. The crowd absolutely embraced that. But I don't think they like each other at all.
All right, Nathan, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers, lads.
4 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB AM.